Hello, everyone. Welcome to Catherine's ESL classroom. In today's lesson, we are going to have part one of past perfect tense. Why is it past perfect tense? Why is it perfect? Well, think of it as because there's two actions that they took place in the past. So think about two actions that happen in the past. One has to come first and the other one has to come second, right? So we use past perfect tense when it was the first action that happened in the past. And then we use the simple past tense as the second action that happened in the past. What? That is a mouthful, I know. But this is part one. We will do the grammar guides, we will practice, and we will practice some more. Okay, so let's have some fun. So how is everyone doing today? Getting ready for today's lesson? All right. Past perfect. This is part one, okay? If you are very familiar with past perfect tense, then you can skip part one and go straight to part two for our grammar fun quiz knowledge check. But for part one, let's practice. Okay, who's ready? All right. Past perfect. Okay, so remember, past perfect is used to talk about an action which happened before another action in the past. So it's still two actions that happened in the past, but one has to come first, and then there's a second one that follows it. So let's decide which action in the past took place first and which took place second. Let's just look at this, okay? What do you think? Right? I arrived at the station at 9 a.m. That's the second that took place because the train left at 8:55 a.m. So you know 8:55 a.m. is before 9 a.m. So this is what we call a timeline. This green line now is the present tense. So anything before the present tense, which is now, is the past tense, okay? So people who know about the past perfect tense, you know we're using the verb had plus the past participle. If you don't know, then you will notice this, okay? So when we say had plus the past participle, we would have to use this in one sentence. Since there are two sentences here, two separate sentences here, we are just using the simple past. Okay, so you'll notice left and you will notice arrived. We're not saying I had arrived or I had left. That's only if we're going to put this in one sentence. So let's stay tuned for that. Okay, so how can you put these two events together in one sentence using the time expression by the time? Okay, by the time is a time expression. So let's see what you know. And if you don't, this is great to learn. So we could say, by the time I arrived at the station, the train had left. So we use the past perfect tense as the first action that happened in the past, which is the train left. So we would say the train had left. The second action that happened in the past is I arrived at the station. Okay, so we're going to use past perfect tense as the first action that happened in the past. And then we would use the simple past as the second action that happened in the past. Okay. Now there's another way we can say this. We could say the train had left by the time I arrived at the station. Okay. So you have to learn to use these time expressions the correct way. So you have to know which action happened first. Okay, now let's practice these. I had baked a cake before the party started. Okay, so the first action happened as mom or I baked a cake. And the second action in the past is the party started. Okay, so the party started has to be the simple past because it's the second action. Don't worry, we're going to keep practicing until you get this. Okay, so remember, the past perfect tense is used to talk about two actions in the past, one after the other. So these are the most common time expressions. Let's just practice the pronunciation here. Repeat after me. After, before, when, by, as soon as, by the time. Good job. Now, here's an example of past perfect tense, how we use this. Lenny had done his homework by 7 o'clock. Okay, you will notice here, we only have one verb tense here, which is the past perfect tense. Why? Because we were talking about the completion, the duration that it took him to complete this homework. It took him from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. So that's two actions that happened in the past. So this is where we would use the past perfect tense. Now, if other people might say, Lenny completed his homework by 7 o'clock. Yes, you can say this, but if you want to use the past perfect tense, this would be the proper usage. Okay, so the form of past perfect tense is we use had plus the past participle. Now remember, with past participles, there are regular verbs and irregular verbs. You must memorize the irregular verbs, or you can simply look them up in the dictionary. Now with regular verbs, simple. You take the verb and you add the ed. But you have to know if they're regular. Okay, so here's a really good place that you can look up the irregular past participle list. You can just look this up in the website. I'll put it down in the comments, or you can see it in the description. So let's just learn some of these to memorize just for practice. So repeat after me. Be becomes been. Had been. Become becomes become. Had become. Begin becomes begun, had begun. Bite, bitten, had bitten. Blow, blown, had blown. Break, broken, had broken. Choose, chosen, had chosen. Come remains the same, come, had come. All right, we were just practicing this. Memorize these, use them in sentences, look them up in this website, englishhints.com/past-participles. Okay. All right, let's get some practice in. You ready? Okay, so let's decide which action in the past took place first and which took place second. We're going to use time expressions here. Let's use when as the time expression. I felt better. I took an aspirin. Now, remember, these are two separate sentences, so that's why they're using the simple past, because we're not using any time expressions here. So what do you think it could be based on what we just learned? If not, don't worry, I'll help you. When I had taken an aspirin, I felt better. So knowing that if we're using past perfect tense, what would be the first action that occurred? That's right, I took an aspirin. So we would say, when I had taken an aspirin, using past perfect tense, I felt better. Felt as in the simple past because it's the second action that happened in the past. How about this one? We called a taxi. We locked the door. So let's try and practice using the time expression, using these two sentences, create one sentence using the time expression before. Before we locked the door, we had called a taxi. So which action happened first in the past? That's right. We called a taxi. So we would say we had called a taxi. So then which action happened second? That's right. We locked the door. So what happens when the first action happens in the past and then the second action happens in the past? That's right. We use past perfect tense first and then past simple tense second. But you have to remember, what are the time expressions? What do they mean? Okay. So if this sentence doesn't make sense to you, we can also say, we had called a taxi before we locked the door. Does that one sound better to you? All right, whichever one sounds better to you. Okay, let's try this one using the time expression as soon as. It stopped raining. We took our dog for a walk. Now, we actually have to use some examples in life. How would we put these two sentences together, creating one sentence using past perfect tense and the simple past tense using the time expression as soon as? All right, it's a lot. All right, here's one example. As soon as it stopped raining, we took our dog for a walk, which is another way we can say this, right? We can flip it. We took our dog for a walk as soon as it stopped raining. Yes. So which action happened first? It stopped raining. Which is the second one? We took our dog for a walk. All right, good job. How about this one? Which action happened first and which one took place second? Using the time expression by the time. We reached the movie theater. The film started. Uh-oh, did we get this one? All right. By the time we reached the movie theater, the film had started. Okay. Now, remember, anytime we use time expressions, we have to know what it means, okay? So which action happened first? That's right. The film had started because we are using the past perfect tense. So we can flip it and say, the film had started by the time we reached the movie theater. So remember, put the timeline, your green line or whatever color line, and you put now as your present tense, and then what are the two actions that happened in the past? And you can use that as your guide. All right. Let's put these two together. He spoke to a policeman. He saw an accident. So which action happened first? Let's put this in one sentence with these two sentences using the time expression after. After he had seen an accident, he spoke to a policeman. All right. So which action happened first? He had seen an accident. So if we're going to say one sentence and we say, what action happened first, we would say he saw an accident. But if we're going to put two sentences together, two past actions together, then we can only have one past perfect and one simple tense. So we have to know which one is happening first and second. We could also say this as he spoke to a policeman after he had seen an accident. So if that one sounds better, then use that. So think of two events that happened to you and put them into a sentence using the past perfect tense. So remember, the first past action, we use the past perfect tense. The second action that followed, we use the past simple tense. So I want you to put down in the comments using the time expressions by the time and before. But remember how to use these time expressions. If you don't know, look them up in the dictionary. So how did you do, everyone? So stay tuned for part 2 for our quiz knowledge check. I hope you learned and mastered a little bit more of the past perfect tense. So thank you, and until next time, bye.